Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest puzzles in the history of life. I'm talking about a really strange, almost alien chapter from Earth's deep past that, honestly, challenges everything we thought we knew about how animals got their start.
So I want you to picture this. Way, way before the dinosaurs, even before the first fish, the Earth's seafloor, it was ruled by these totally bizarre, alien-looking things. For nearly 100 million years, they were the undisputed kings down there, a quiet, strange empire in the deep twilight of Earth's early history.
Just imagine that seafloor for a second. There are no fish, no crabs, none of that. Instead, you have these looming, almost silent forms. You've got these weird, quilted pennants just waving in the current, thickets of fleshy plumes all tangled up, and these massive, flat sheets just kind of tumbling across the abyssal plains. For the very first time in Earth's history, giant living things were casting shadows in the deep.
So what were they? Where in the world did they come from? And maybe most importantly, where did they go? This is a true paleontological detective story, and those are the questions at the very heart of it. We're talking about one of the biggest frontiers in science right now, a mystery that's been locked away in stone for over 500 million years.
All right, Section 1. Now, what's so cool about this story is that the first clues to this lost world, they weren't found in some high-tech lab or on a huge expedition. Nope, they were found by curious people, often kids actually, whose incredible discoveries were just ignored, dismissed, and basically forgotten for decades.
I mean, look at this timeline. The gap between the first hints of this lost world and it getting officially recognized is almost 100 years. That's just incredible. It really shows you how hard it can be for science to accept something new, something that just doesn't fit the rules. These amazing finds were just brushed aside as, just weird markings or your imagination, or even the effects of heat stroke. And this was the real turning point. When Professor Ford finally saw that fossil, he knew he was looking at a complete paradox. Here was this complex life form, right there in rocks that were supposed to be totally barren. It just shouldn't have existed. And this one, single, feather-like impression, found and championed by a schoolboy who just wouldn't give up, it blew the whole case wide open.
And you got a feel for this guy, Reginald Sprigg. A decade earlier in Australia, he had the exact same experience. He finds what look exactly like fossilized jellyfish. I mean, it's obvious. But when he sends his paper to the big science journal Nature, rejected. His colleagues literally told him the Australian heat must have gotten to his head. He was so dismissed that eventually he just gave up and went to look for oil instead. Can you believe that?
Okay, Section 2. So, with these discoveries finally being taken seriously, scientists needed a theory, right? They needed an explanation. The case fell to a paleontologist named Martin Glassner, and he came up with a neat, tidy, and for a really long time, a very compelling story for what these strange creatures were. Now, Glassner's logic, it was perfectly sound. You got these Ediacaran fossils showing up in the rock record right before the Cambrian explosion. That's when all the animal groups we know today just burst onto the scene. So it just made sense that these had to be the primitive ancestors, the missing links. And he spent the next 25 years of his life meticulously matching up these Ediacaran suspects to the animal family tree.
And you can see why his theory was so convincing. Take Charnea, the fossil that started it all. Glassner argued it was just a primitive sea pen. And I mean, look at them side by side. The resemblance is pretty striking, right? It looked the part and it fit the timeline perfectly. This became the poster child for the whole missing link idea.
In this comparison right here, it's a perfect example of how Glassner seemed to solve the whole puzzle. Remember Reginald Sprigg's jellyfish that everyone dismissed? Well, Glassner said those circular fossils, now called Aspidella, were just that, the fossilized remains of ancient jellyfish. It all fit. The case was basically closing.
Then you had organisms like Spergina. It seemed to have a head, a segmented body. I mean, this looked like an ancestor to worms, maybe even early arthropods. The theory got so popular that museums all over the world started filling their dioramas with these things, showing them as our primitive ancestors, crawling and waving around on the pre-Cambrian seafloor. But you know how it is in a good detective story. The simplest, neatest solution, it's often wrong. So let's get to the plot twist. It's time to see how this beautiful, elegant theory starts to completely fall apart when you look a little closer.
So, let's go back to our star witness, Charnea. Yeah, they look similar, but they lived and grew in fundamentally opposite ways. Modern sea pens grow from the bottom up,
But Charnia, it grew from the top down. And sea pens, they burrow into the sand to hide from danger. We have never, ever found a single burrow underneath a Charnia fossil. So yeah, the Star Witness's testimony is starting to look pretty shaky.
And what about those jellyfish? Well, once you look past that basic circular shape, the comparison just completely breaks down. The fossils show no tentacles, no internal organs, nothing that actually makes a jellyfish a jellyfish. Some of them were even found permanently stuck to the seafloor. The resemblance, as one scientist brilliantly put it, was no stronger than that of an abandoned omelet.
And then there's their body plan. This is a big one. A lot of these creatures, they look symmetrical at first, but they're not. They have something called glide plane symmetry. See how the segments are mirrored but also offset? It creates this kind of zigzag pattern. This is a huge clue, because that type of symmetry is found in absolutely no living animal group today. None.
So here's the bottom line. When you actually look for the basic things that define an animal, the Ediacarans fail every single test. There's no mouth to eat with, no gut to digest food, no organs of any kind, and no real evidence they could even move on their own. The beautifully simple missing link theory, it just has fatal, undeniable flaws.
Okay, section 4. So, with our prime suspect, the animal ancestor theory pretty much cleared, the case is wide open again. So, if they weren't animals, what on earth were they?
And this is the question that could unlock the whole mystery. If they didn't have mouths, how did these giant organisms eat? How did they get their energy? I mean, some of these things were over a meter long. Getting that big without a mouth or a gut means you have to have a completely different way of living. And trying to answer that question leads us to some truly bizarre alternative theories.
So, what are the options? Well, maybe they were like giant fungi, just soaking up nutrients directly from the mud through their skin. Or maybe, and this is a wild one, they weren't even truly multicellular, but were actually gigantic single-celled organisms, like giant amoebas. But the most profound idea is that they were completely separate kingdom of life, a failed experiment in being big and complex that just vanished, leaving no descendants at all, a lost branch from the tree of life. But wait, there's one more twist. Maybe the problem isn't with the fossils. Maybe the problem is us, our expectations. We're looking for animal features, mouths, guts, stings, that evolved over the last 500 million years in response to a world full of other animals. Think about it. What's the point of a jellyfish's sting if there's nothing else around to sting? It's possible the very first animals were totally unrecognizable to us.
So, are we searching for ancestors that look nothing like what we expect them to? The Ediacaran mystery forces us to totally reconsider what evolution is really like. It wasn't a straight line. It was this sprawling, chaotic tree with all sorts of dead ends and weird, wonderful branches. The answer might be right there in front of us, just disguised as something we can't comprehend yet. The search definitely continues.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this explainer. If you enjoyed this little trip into deep time, do us a favor and subscribe to the channel, hit like, and ring the bell so you don't miss new videos. We'll see you for the next one.